Imagine traveling hundreds of miles in the mid-13th century just to see one guy give a sermon. It might seem crazy to others, but to you, it's not. The crowd he draws in is immense, and the sun that day is just brutal. Is the sermon even going to be worth it in that heat? Someone in the crowd challenges him to do something about the sun. And guess what? He does. Clouds roll in and provide a welcome respite from the brutal heat. The sermon was indescribably beautiful, and you go home renewed and content. A few years later, though, you hear a rumor that makes your heart drop. They say that a man has been killed. But how? By whom? We need a full picture. Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of the Sanctified Podcast, the show where we explore the stories of various saints throughout history and learn about what they did and how we came to recognize them as saints today. Today, we're going to explore the life of Saint Peter of Verona, also known as Saint Peter Martyr. His faith was so strong and obvious, he was canonized faster than any other saint in history. Peter was born in Verona, Italy in 1205. Pretty interestingly, both of his parents were Catholics, a religion that branched off from Christianity, but in a major way. In short, they didn't believe in God the same way as Christians or Catholics generally do. They thought that humans were trapped angels that would be reincarnated, like in Hinduism. They didn't believe in the Immaculate Conception, and really there weren't a whole lot of set rules, which led to other inconsistencies within Catholicism itself. But in a mix of irony and hypocrisy, Peter was educated in a Catholic school. After he finished his basic education, he went to the University of Bologna. While studying in Bologna, Peter joined the Dominican order by St. Dominic. He had grown a tad irritated by the lack of faith his classmates had, and he had just met St. Dominic himself, so it all just kind of seemed to line up perfectly. A little too perfect if you ask me. Wink, wink. He became a very popular preacher and was pretty famous in the Lombardy region. At one point, though, he was accused of a scandal and he was exiled. He nearly gave up everything as a result because he hadn't done anything wrong. But he remembered that neither did Jesus when he was crucified, so Peter persisted. Eventually his name was cleared and he returned to his old life. Though it wasn't necessarily safe because he was so famous for miracles in his sermons that the crowds he drew in nearly crushed him on a few occasions. Peter settled in the convent of St. Eustorgio for a little while, and while he was there, he led a very ascetic lifestyle. At dawn, he went to confession, then he celebrated Mass, then he spent a while listening to confessions, then he performed penances on himself, and after all that was done, he only ate one simple meal in the evenings, and he would take a nap, and when he woke up, he would pray and study for his faith, and then he would repeat this every day, day after day. Before Peter was even 30 years old, his reputation was so strong that Pope Gregory IX appointed Peter as Inquisitor of Northern Italy in 1234, which I think it's fairly likely that the Pope saw Peter's background as being very useful for the region. Since his parents were Catholics, Peter was familiar with their beliefs, and the region of Northern Italy that Peter was assigned to was known to have a lot of Catholics. Peter founded the Venerable Archiconfraternita della Misericordia di Firenze around 1240, after he evangelized most of Italy. In 1243, he promoted his new foundation to the Pope for approval, and a little while later, he founded. After so many repeated successes with his new groups, with converting people, Pope Innocent IV saw a beacon in Peter that could draw others in, and so he appointed Peter as Inquisitor in Lombardy in 1251. He was there for about 6 months, though it's not known how many, if any, trials that he oversaw. The only record that we actually have of him from this assignment is a declaration of clemency for those confessing heresy or sympathy to heresy. Peter's sermons were so moving and so enthralling that the conversions it led to were just too vast to count. Many of the Cathars of the region came back to Catholicism, but obviously he would make some enemies in that process, especially among the higher ranking members of the Catharists. Eventually, he irritated the wrong group of people, and a group of Milanese Cathars met and discussed a plan to have Peter removed. They hired Carino of Balsamo as an assassin, and Carino brought an accomplice, Manfredo Clitoro of Giussano, to help. On April 6, 1252, Carino and Manfredo followed Peter as he was returning from Como to Milan. Once they reached a secluded area, they attacked and killed Peter, and the companion traveling with them was viciously attacked as well, Friar Domenico. Carino hit Peter in the head with an axe, and then turned to Domenico to kill him too. But Peter wasn't finished off. He rose to his knees and recited the first articles of the Apostles' Creed. He offered his death to God, and legends say that he wrote the first words of the Apostles' Creed in his own blood on the ground. Now, after this attack, Domenico did survive for 5 more days, which is why we get a glimpse of Peter's final actions. But eventually, Domenico did succumb to his injuries. There are stories that Peter communicated with saints pretty regularly, including the Virgin Martyrs Catherine, Agnes, and Cecilia. In addition, there's a legend that says there was a large crowd that gathered for one of his sermons, so large that they had to be outside because no building could house them all. But the sun was unbearably brutal that day, and some people challenged Peter to do something about it. Basically, they were like, if you really are in God's good grace right now, do something. And well, he did. He asked for shelter from the sun, and not long after, a cloud appeared out of nowhere and blocked out the sun for the crowd. There were many, many other miracles that were said to occur during his life, most of which the details are lost. There's healing said to have occurred, especially for the sick being healed of injuries that they've had for years, or having blindness cured, but they're a lot more of a tertiary source sort of deal, not a primary source, so they're not totally taken as being absolutely truthful, though there's enough of those stories to reach the conclusion that either some are true or they're true in some capacity. After his death, Peter's body was taken to Milan and laid in the church of San Eustorgio, but in the 18th century he was moved to the Portinari Chapel and has rested there ever since. Even after his death, more miracles were reported at his resting place. People would go to visit, and they'd be healed, they'd have good fortunes, you name it. Peter's canonization process was the fastest for any saint ever. He was canonized March 9th, 1253, less than a year after his death. Something that's literally impossible today. It's part of the rules that you have to wait a certain amount of time. So we know it's not going to get beaten. So he was a very, very devoted and influential person, because think about all that he had going for him. He wasn't only a martyr, he was also very dedicated to the church, extremely influential, performed numerous miracles, had countless conversions. He was like the perfect role model for the church. His feast day was April 6th for centuries, but in 1969 it was moved to April 29th, so that it didn't overlap with the Easter Triduum anymore. He is the patron saint of the Order of Preachers, for Inquisitors, for Midwives, for Lombardy, Como, Cremona, Duchy of Modena, and Reggio, Grenoble, and Puerto Rico. Peter's assassin, Carino, eventually repented and confessed to his crime. Then he converted to Catholicism and became a lay brother in the Dominican convent of Forli. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them. So what do you think of Saint Peter of Verona? What about his conviction in his dying moments? I hope you found his story interesting, and I look forward to learning your thoughts about Saint Peter Martyr. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to support the channel, you can subscribe, download the episode, like, comment, share with your friends, or send me a suggestion on a saint to check out by emailing me at sanctifiedpodcast@proton.me. You can find the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Podbean, and more. Take care, and have a wonderful day.